Ever think, man, I wish I knew that sooner? Trust me, you're not the only one. I'm Alan Rose, and welcome to Learn Too Late. Mallory, thank you so much for joining us on the Learn Too Late podcast. Mallory is a dear, dear friend of mine, and I am so excited to have you on. You were Miss America 2013. We competed together, and that's where I got to know you as a really shoot from the hip kind of fireball. And I tell everybody who's willing to listen, I'm like, if you're going to lose to somebody, it might as well be Mallory Hagan. And you're not Mallory Hagan anymore. You're a Mallory Stramera, and you were married. I am so grateful to be able to have gone to your wedding and witness all of that. You were a new mom. You have so many things going on, but I wanted to have you on today to talk about your experience competing at Miss America, your experience running for office, and just learn a little bit about what that was like for people who are interested in getting involved. I think that a lot of people out there think to themselves, man, this isn't it. And how can I make a difference? How can I actually get involved? How could I run for office? So I would love to hear, maybe moving back a little bit before Miss America, before running for Congress. Who were you growing up? Were you always ambitious? Did that develop later? Did you ever think that you were going to be somebody who said, hey, I was Miss America and I ran for office someday?
I definitely didn't think those things, either of them. I definitely feel as though growing up, I've actually been reflecting on this a lot in therapy and otherwise. I never really fit in. Something about growing up in the South and being surrounded by people who follow what I think is the socially normal thing to do, which is graduate high school, go to Auburn University, find your partner while you're in college, get married shortly afterwards, start your family, etc. Just none of that while I was growing up really appealed to me. And there was a lot of social pressure, I think, or I felt it, to be on that path. And I very much, A, don't like being told what to do. And B, just didn't feel called to that. And so I always felt a little outside of my element growing up. And I think that came across in almost everything I did. So I was always just a little bit different, always wanted to do things differently, march to the beat of my own drum. So moving to New York when I was 19 with no job, no place to live, no friends, no nothing, and $1,000, wasn't so out of the ordinary for my family, but I think to the average person growing up in Alabama, they would have been like, what are you doing? But to me, that was the catalyst for getting back involved in the Miss America organization and wanting to sort of find my way in that world that felt familiar to me. And I did that as a way to pay for school after I moved to New York. But I just never thought in a million years that I was the type of person that could win on that stage, given everything I just said. I think Miss America, a lot of people think about that world as a place where you have to conform and you have to say a certain thing or dress a certain way or be a certain type of girl to win. And I had those thoughts too. So I definitely never thought I would do that. And those same elements kind of apply to running for office. I don't have a traditional educational path, and I wasn't interested in policy or public service in that way. But when people asked me to run, I started to see some parallels in my personality and I think what it takes to be a candidate to run for office, which is, fortitude and resilience and a little bit of scrappiness, all of those things. And running for office was hands down the best decision I've ever made in my entire life up until I met my husband. And I'm grateful that I had the opportunity to experience both of those things and be in both of those worlds in those ways.
Well, I would love to hear how you got your start in pageants. I know that, hearing your story, a million times, but I think it was a unique start, and it wasn't one where you walked on the stage and walked away with the title of Miss New York and went to Miss America. It was a journey for you to get there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel really fortunate. I grew up in a family that was always in some way involved in theater or the arts. My grandmother owned a dance studio. My mother still owns a dance studio. She's in year 32, I think. And so I always grew up on stage and performing, and I loved that world. And we had a family friend who ran a local competition for the Miss America organization. So she asked if I might be interested in competing the very first year that Miss America introduced their teen program. So up until the early 2000s, Miss America was for women 17 to 24 or 23, give or take the rules of any given year. And then they introduced a teen program. And of course, Alabama was one of the first states to adopt it. So I competed the very first year that there was a teen program in Alabama, and really just did it because I wanted to dance on a different stage and have a different experience. And that very first year, I was fortunate to get third runner up. And I think, you kind of get bit by the bug and you're like, oh, okay,
sure.
well, let me do that again. And so then I was first runner up, and then I was second runner up. And then I actually didn't make the top 5. So I competed in the teen program for 4 years and then did a year at Miss Alabama before I moved on to living in New York City. So to me, competing was something that brought me a lot of joy. But I think in Alabama also brought me a lot of self-doubt, and it was moving to New York and kind of getting out of the system. We see this happen now that we're on this side of it and much older. Sometimes girls just you have to walk away and live life a little bit to have something to talk about when you come into the room. So yeah, I started competing as a teen, and I came back with a purpose as an adult.
Well, what was the thing that you think made the difference for you getting into New York and then ultimately winning? Do you think you could pinpoint it to something where, okay, hey, this clicked for me and I knew that, I was walking away with it?
Well, something clicked for me in purpose, right? When I competed in Alabama, many people may not know that every contestant in the Miss America organization, or opportunity as it's called now, has a personal platform that they champion. And competing as a teen and my first year as a Miss at 18, the platform was just, oh, I have to do this. This is something I have to have, right? And I think that's actually a good thing, right? A lot of teenagers aren't really thinking outside of themselves. That's just the nature of being a teenager and having an adolescent brain. So being forced through the Miss America program to pinpoint an area that you could serve your community and talk about that, really important. But as I got older and I was competing, my first year in New York, I don't really think I felt very connected to my platform. I just, again, had it because I had to have one. And it was actually watching my now best friend, Claire Buffy, win Miss New York and really make an impact with her chosen platform, which at the time was Straight for Equality. She has a sister who's a lesbian, and she traveled the state, really making an impact, talking to young people about being inclusive and what it means to be a straight ally. And that was the year that marriage equality passed in New York. And she had been in Albany, being a part of those conversations. And
she was really in the right place at the right time. I remember her talking about that, why me, why right now? And yeah, she hit it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I watched that. And I remember I was first runner up to Claire, and I was devastated, which is so silly now that I look back at it, because between the two of us, she was the obvious choice. But I remember watching her year unfold and thinking, I didn't know what I didn't know, right? She really made an impact. And so it had me thinking about how can I actually make an impact and not just have a platform, So it was watching her win. And then the year after her, Caitlin, I was also her first runner up, also devastated again.
God, that must have stung. I mean,
yes,
I can't imagine. Damn.
But again, Caitlin, to her credit, she had even more fire for her platform, and she did even more than Claire did. And both of those women showcased something to me that I had been missing, and it lit a fire in me to figure out what I wanted to do in that capacity and how I could have that level of impact. And so I'll always be grateful for those 2 years that were a huge learning experience and required a lot of self exploration and understanding to come back that third time and win.
Yeah, I think people, they don't see the initial loss as something that's beneficial in so many cases, but I think we see it time and time again that the most successful title holders or the most successful politicians are usually the ones who didn't get their first swing at it. And being somebody who did go to Miss USA and go to Miss America on my first go at it, I really regret not having the time to season myself, so to speak, and to really, like you said, get to know exactly who you are, why you're doing it, the message behind it. So for anybody out there listening, if you don't win, try again. I think you're living proof of resilience pays off.
Well, also, and it's not just like pageantry, right? I mean, even if it's a
Totally.
job that you're after or whatever it is, I think if you can just take a step back from being disappointed long enough to go, okay, what am I supposed to learn from this? What am I supposed to glean from this situation? And how can I fuel that, or how can I use that as fuel versus sort of wallowing in that I didn't win, right?
100%. And I think even in picking a career, picking some sort of purpose, like I've changed what my goal is, my dream is. Like people are like, oh, I've had the same dream, like couldn't be me.
Yeah.
I've
What's that
had the
feel
same
like?
dream for 5 minutes. Okay. And on to the next thing. I have ADHD. It's always what is my
Yeah.
new hyperfixation. So, but that's okay. That's who I am. And I like to find something, get incredibly passionate at it, hyperfixate, learn everything that I can, soak everything out, and then on to the next thing. And I used to find a lot of shame around that. Why can't I stick with something? Why can't I be consistent? But now I say, hey, this is because I meant to do something else right now, and let's run with it. And that's okay if I change what I want to do every year for the rest of my life. Life's not boring, and
Well, I was going to
that's
say,
fine
how
for
much
me.
more interesting of a conversationalist. That's how I look at it. I share that with you. I was a news anchor and I left being a news anchor to run for office because I thought that was going to be challenging and interesting and different. And then from there, I went on to communications and I worked on presidential races, and all of it has led somewhere in politics and comms. But ultimately, yeah, if you want to do something different tomorrow, then it's your life. It's our life. I think there is so much shame and feeling like, why don't I have this like career trajectory in a corporate whatever? And I'm like, that just sounds boring.
Correct. And I'm married to that, Boy Scout, very serious finance career kind of guy. And that's wonderful for him. It's what he wants. It's where he thrives. But again, couldn't be me. I don't understand it. And even in our conversations, he's bringing something up. And because I've lived 75 lives at this point, I always have something to say and I just can't stop talking. So he always thinks that I'm trying to interrupt. And I'm like, I am not trying to interrupt. This is how I empathize. This is how I feel like I'm contributing to the conversation or furthering our relationship. So it's just a different mindset, and I'm okay with the differences now. But it took a long time to get to the point where I felt comfortable doing that. But I would love to talk about your political career because I was always somebody who wanted to run for office growing up, and it's one of these very daunting ideas of, hey, I want to do this, but where do I even start? How could I do this? Could I afford this? Who would support me? You ran for office in 2018, correct? For the House of Representatives in Alabama. And where did that even come from? You had finished Miss America, you were working as a news anchor. What was the pivot there?
Yeah. Well, I also never thought I shouldn't say also. I never thought I would run for office. I always thought that there was a whole different career path for me. I thought it was on television. I thought I wanted to be famous on television so I could use my influence to do good things in this world. I mean, that was truly where I thought things were going. And it was actually the whole hoopla of the Miss America organization that I don't need to relegate, but if you're interested in learning about it, you can Google all of that. sort of catapulted me into the spotlight again, sort of as like a fighter and somebody who was willing to stand up for myself and stand up for other people. And that actually encouraged my local Democratic club to reach out to me and ask if I had ever thought about running for office. So that was really the catalyst, was kind of being pushed back into the spotlight in that scenario, in that way. And of course I said no. I was like, absolutely not. You got the wrong person. I don't have a bachelor's degree, and that was always something that I felt a lot of shame about. I thought that they would use that against me. I thought I wasn't smart enough to hold my own in the scenario of a political candidacy or up against somebody who had been in office. And that was, if I'm being honest, the real reason I said no, as I was like, everyone's going to think I'm stupid. I'm not very smart. I've since learned that there's this famous piece of Michelle Obama's book where she's like, once you get at these tables, you realize that most people are not very smart. And I experienced that, you know. When I decided to run, I was at all these tables with powerful people, and I was like, wait a minute, actually, I'm a lot smarter than I thought I was, and maybe even you. But yeah, that was the catalyst for running. And yeah, it was a really naive thing to do, but I'm glad that I didn't know more about running. And man, I'm really proud of what we did. We put together a really professional campaign that had a good infrastructure with great staff. We registered over 2,000 college students in my district to vote, which was unheard of in Alabama. We increased Democratic turnout. I raised more money than any other candidate in 2018 in our state. And I worked really hard. I don't think I knew what hard work was until I ran for office. I'm talking 6 a.m. at the office, starting call time at 8, traveling to multiple events in a day. I think I put like 50,000 miles on my car.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I worked my tail off. Actually, the opposite. I gained quite a bit of weight that year, but I worked really, really, really hard, and I was proud of that, and it made me want to do it again. So I ran again in 2022.
What do you think surprised you the most about that experience? And I know it's probably a loaded question because probably a lot of things.
I mean, honestly, maybe what I just said, that there are a lot of people who hold a lot of power in this country and in the world who you assume are really smart or really with it, and they're actually not. And a lot of these systems are not as intricate as we think they are. They're not as strong as we think they are. The Alabama Democratic Party basically just doesn't exist. Like, the infrastructure just isn't there. And, you know, you just get a peek behind all these curtains, right? You get a peek behind the curtain of how lobbying works, and you're like, that's kind of crazy. You get a peek behind how legislation works. I mean, it's just all of it. I think it just all felt really far away and something like you couldn't accomplish. And then you get up close to it and you're like, these are just regular people. This is all doable.
I feel like it's all this very Oz situation when you get to the top of anything, you know, and the same thing with, you know, Miss America or business or politics, where it seems unattainable. The people seem so sparkly and special. And then when you're, like you said, sitting at a table, you're behind the scenes, you're in a green room. They're just people, right? And a lot of the times significantly less impressive than you would ever think, meaner than you would ever think, just not capable in general. And I think that holds so many people back from trying things that they would be great at. And that's one of the things in my life where I've realized that, how would I say this? The people who are the most successful are so rarely the most talented, so rarely the most intelligent. They're just the ones who either had a leg up or kept at it, you know, and the difference between failure and success is almost always just one more try. And if you put yourself out there, you would be surprised at the things that you can accomplish. And I mean, I feel like that way about most of my life. It's just being bold enough to give it a shot. I would love to hear about what the first sort of 30 days were like once you decided, hey, I'm going to give this a go. Um, what was it like to actually start running a congressional campaign?
Hmm. I think the first 30 days were really just trying to figure out, what do you even need, right? I was asked to run for office basically in the 11th hour, and I had less than a week to decide I was going to run, put my application in to put my name on the ballot. And then it was like, okay, where do you get a campaign manager in Alabama?
Well,
You
and that's
don't,
who
just so we're clear.
asked you to run. That's so I want to know like the real nitty gritty, like the powers that be. Who were the people that came to you and said, Mallory Hagan, like you're it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, a little bit of context. In Alabama in 2016, we had a Democrat win a statewide office for Senate, Doug Jones, and that was completely unexpected. But he was running against someone who had some very serious allegations of pedophilia, which seems to be a feature and not a bug. But anyway, so Doug won the statewide office, and people worked really hard to get him elected. Alabama has had a Republican supermajority since the early 2000s, and so him winning a statewide office as a Democrat was a huge, huge upset. But he did it because people activated, built an infrastructure, and worked really hard to get him elected. And so those people who were activated were like, oh, we did this in 27, I actually think it was 2017, his special election. So 2018 came the midterms, and they were like, we're going to put together a slate of Democrats that can win, that can do this. So they worked really hard to recruit candidates across the state. So where I'm from is Lee County, Alabama. I'm from Opelika. And Lee County has a Democratic club that's very active, had a bunch of new leadership, people who had just gotten involved again. And they were really excited and determined to put up a fight against our congressman, Mike Rogers, who's still in office. He's been there 20 something years. He doesn't answer the phone, doesn't respond to emails, never has town halls, only closed door meetings, that kind of thing, which is really common in American politics, especially with people who have been in office for a long time. So they were like, we want somebody who will kind of pull him out, draw him out, and make him respond to us, make him have to run a campaign. I don't think anybody had run against him in a really long time. So they were the ones who asked. And then though, it's the blind leading the blind. Everyone's really excited,
Right.
but no one really knows what to do. And so, that's when things like Emerge, which is an organization that teaches specifically women how to run for office. Emerge had just sort of come up. Ignite, like there were all these, the supermajority, all these entities were starting to take shape in response to President Trump's first term, right? Like the way that women were being defined by his presidency, the attacks on our rights. So these organizations were popping up and really encouraging women to run for office, Emily's List, things like that. So yeah, they were the ones who tapped on my shoulder. It was a woman named Lindsay Hanner, who then she became my campaign manager, also blind leading the blind. But both of us are very similar in that I think we really wanted to prove ourselves, and we really wanted for people to take it seriously. So we kind of like burned a candle at both ends, both of us, as a duo for a while until we got closer to the general and we kind of wrapped our head around what was going on.
So what are the first steps? You talked about paperwork. Is it literally just like walking into a courthouse or a federal office building?
You want like literal? What do we do?
I want literal. I want somebody out there who's sitting there and saying, God, I hate the person who represents me right now, and
Yes.
I want to replace them. I want to know what to do. Here's my how-to.
Here's my how-to. Well, where you live matters because how you get on the ballot could be different depending on where you live. So my experience is that either you're a Republican or a Democrat or an independent in Alabama. We don't have any other party. We do have a Libertarian Party, but so the Democratic Party requires that you pay a certain dollar amount to put in an application to put your name on the ballot.
Is it a
So
lot?
here, when I did it, I think it was like 1,600. I do think that has increased since 2018. And if you're somebody who's like, I don't have $1,600, perfect thing you can do, you can go online and you can set up what's called an exploratory committee. So you don't actually have to declare that you're running for office to explore the concept of running for office.
Ooh,
and what that allows you to do is raise money through pledges. So there are several different online entities that allow you to do that. And that's what I did. So I set up an exploratory committee, sent it out to everyone I knew. And I was like, hey, I want to run for office. I don't have $1,700 laying around that I can just throw away. Would you pledge to support me as a candidate? And if that's what happens and you are able to raise that kind of money, then you can turn that pledge into an actual campaign donation and therefore pay for whatever it is that you need. So yeah, you would do that. There are some states that require signatures, maybe 1,000 signatures, 5,000 signatures. So you actually have to go to events and around and get signatures with people who live in your state or your district. But from there, if your name is on the ballot, then you want to build out the infrastructure of a campaign team. And what I think people don't understand is that building a campaign is a lot like building a new business. So you have, a campaign manager, you've got somebody who helps you with communications, you've got somebody who helps you with fundraising. And depending on the size of your campaign, say if you're running for city council, you might not have all of those things. You might just have one other person who's willing to help you fundraise and get out in the community and, make yard signs and that kind of thing. But as a congressional candidate,
most of those people, are they volunteers at this kind of level, or are you having to also raise the funds or convince someone to give you the funds to pay employees?
So for a congressional race or like a Senate race, gubernatorial race, I would say you should expect to pay your staff, and you should expect to pay a campaign manager or like a finance chair, a comms person, upwards of $75,000 to $100,000 a year, depending on your race and location. In a state house race like the one I ran in 2022, I had far less paid staff. And in fact, the woman who ran my campaign did so as a volunteer. So you kind of get a mixture of both depending on the size of your campaign and what you're running for.
Well, and how are you, I don't want to interrupt you, but how are you raising the money to get that? Are you getting that from local Democratic organizations? Are you having to, knock on doors, beg, borrow, steal? Where's that coming from?
A little bit of both. So the thing that you should definitely get comfortable with if you want to run for office ever is asking your friends for money. It's extremely uncomfortable, but if your friends won't support you, then who will, right? So, so the very first thing that you do if you're running for office is you basically like print out your Rolodex of your contact list of your phone, and you go through your contact list and you basically put a $sign next to everyone's name. Like, from what I know about you and your life and your, where you live and how many kids you have, what do I think you could give me? What do I think you as Alan would be willing to give me? So like, let's say I think you as Alan probably over time, if I made separate asks, would give me $1,000, but not all at once. So like, you start to break people down by like, if I called Alan this week, she'd probably give me $100. And then if I call her 2 months from now, she might give me $250 if I ask nicely, right? Like, so you start to think about who in your life based on their life experience and how much money you think they have, how much money they would give you. And then you start to devise a plan about when you contact them, how often you contact them, how much money you ask them for, which is always, by the way, more than you think that they can give. So you always ask for almost double what you think they're willing to give you so that they land on where you actually think that they will. So you start to devise a plan of your friends.
Yeah, I apologize for being very broke when you ran for office. I donated both times, but it was not much. But if you were to run again, I would give you all of the shekels. And we're in a much better financial position now as an actual grown-up. So please run again.
Isn't that what being in your 30s is really nice?
It's nice. And I mean, the panic that ensued as 30 approached. And I mean, I think that's working in the beauty industry, being a woman, being a millennial too. It just felt like this impending doom of life is over at 30. I have never been happier. I've never been more fulfilled. I've never been more confident in who I am, the way that I look, the way that my brain works. I mean, what freedom, like sweet, sweet freedom. And
Don't you wish you could just go back and hug like your 22-year-old self and be like, just relax.
just wait, just wait. Yeah. And I mean, it was never that I felt like deeply unhappy with who I was, but I just had no idea. And I think also finding out that I have ADHD, they say that your prefrontal cortex doesn't fully develop until about 10 years later than the average person. And so you're sitting at 35, which was almost like clockwork for me. Turned 35 and my life made sense. I was able to just focus and dig in, and it's opened up an entirely different world to me. And I'm like, if I could go back and just tell little me, just wait, it gets better.
Yeah, it does. Maggie has diagnosed that I have ADHD, but I've never been actually diagnosed. And so I do wonder, because I also feel like I'm 37, the past like 3 years, I finally am like with it. I don't know how else to describe it. I'm finally
I think that every successful woman I know, I'm diagnosing. I'm like, yeah, probably.
Yeah, I don't know. That would make a lot of sense. I would take it. I would take that for sure.
Well, doing this and running your campaign, what was it like to actually get close to voting day? What do you do in terms of trying to get out the vote, building up support, raising money? What are those last push things? Once you've applied, you've gotten your team together, you're, knocking down doors, asking for votes. Like, how do you get yourself to the finish line?
All of those things are still happening. They're just happening all day long versus as a small part of the day. So, I mean, if you want to take it 2 weeks out of an election, you've engaged every person who's ever signed up to volunteer as much as you possibly can, right? You've got a team of people who are out knocking doors every day on your behalf, and so are you. You've got a team of people who are making phone calls on your behalf to people who live in the district, making sure that they know that there's an election, their voter registration's up to date, they've got a plan to go vote. If they need a ride, you can help them with that. There are really just not enough hours in the day to make that last final push to contact as many people as you can. I think what people would be surprised by is that voters almost have to be contacted 7 times for it to register to them that there is an election happening when there's not a presidential 7 times. So that means when you think about money and how you utilize it in a campaign, sometimes you get a piece of mail from a candidate, right? Depending on the size of your district, that piece of mail could have cost anywhere between $10,000 and $30,000 just to send you one piece of mail. And I have to contact you 6 more times somehow. I have to knock on your door. I've got to give you a phone call. You've got to get a text message from me. You've got to see something online of mine. You've got to see a billboard. There's all these different ways that you have to communicate with people. And so there are a lot of different platforms out there to do that. So, you get the data of who's in your district and how they're likely to vote. And, then you determine based on their voter score, essentially, how often do they vote. You start with the people who vote the most often and you work your way towards the people who might need to be activated. I mean, there's so much that goes into determining how and when you contact people, and all of that costs money. All of it costs manpower. And it requires that as a candidate, at least I feel this way. There are some candidates who are clueless and have no idea what's going on in their campaign, and they just show up and shake hands. I'm just not that person. So it requires that you've got this very bird's eye view managerial ability to go, okay, my field operations doing this, my communications operations doing this, I'm over here doing this with fundraising. I've got in-person fundraising events. We're texting, we're calling, we're emailing. Same thing. So it does really require, depending on the size and scale, that you're willing to put those hats on so that you can see the full picture of your operation. And a lot of people have campaign managers who do that, but campaign managers are hard to come by in places like Alabama for a Democrat. So you kind of have to wear both hats.
Well, you foreshadowed a little bit that your opponent went on to win in this campaign. Losing a campaign like that, was there any regret around your decision to run? Or was it, hey, I fought the good fight?
No, there was no regret. There was some anger. There was anger at the systems that don't exist in Alabama for people to be successful running as a Democrat. And there was anger in some of the things I learned about the inter-party politics. And there's a lot of racism and racial divide within the Democratic Party in Alabama. There's a lot of Jim Crow leftover, civil rights stuff that goes on here. So there's a lot of infighting, which I think if you take your scope out to just American politics and look at Democrats, there's a lot of infighting always. Big tent syndrome. But there was a lot of anger, but there was never any regret. And the reason is because I knew going in that I wouldn't win. That like the numbers just weren't there. Now, interestingly enough, right now in this year, in this political space that we're in, the number that I would have had to overcome would absolutely be doable this year. So that's kind of crazy to think about. Like it's not that big of a spread. But yeah, I knew I wouldn't win and I was okay with that. The goal for me was to use the national platform that I had to bring attention to the fact that there were some real problems in Alabama. Most notably, there are environmental issues in counties where people don't have like functioning sewer systems. There's literal shit in people's like front yards. There's some third world stuff that goes on in our rural spaces in this state. And one of the other things I wanted to bring attention to was the maternal mortality rate and women's health in general.
Yeah.
So I went in knowing I could use my platform to get national media to be able to talk about some of those issues and bring attention to them. And the second piece of it was that at the time I was 29 and I really wanted to encourage other young people to run for office and to get involved in politics. And that's potentially what I'm most proud of is that I did that. You know, people contacted me, Miss America women contacted me from across the country and said, I watched your campaign. I want you to know that I'm running for city council or I'm running for school board. And the people who I pulled into my campaign who had never done anything political also ended up running for office or staying involved in politics in some capacity. And so to me, that's a win.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I know a lot of people talk about the financial cost of running a campaign, you know, the effort involved, but what was the cost to you personally? Your life is kind of pulled apart, ripped apart. Your reputation is called into question. I mean, it's hard. And I think that deters a lot of people from running for office because they say, not that I have skeletons in the closet, but I don't want to put myself and my family through that. What was it like for you?
Definitely very difficult to, and potentially, again, going back to the fact that I was naive, you know, I don't think I really realized just how divided our country and communities were even then, back in 2018. Like, I knew that Donald Trump had unearthed something in our country, and I, growing up in Alabama, was very aware of some of those dynamics, but calling people that I knew my entire life, who had known me since I was 2 and 3 years old, who were happy to cheer me on as Miss America and proud to claim me when I won, laugh in my face that I was running for office, say and do horrendous things in online, you know, say things about me or my family, like people I had literally grown up with who grew up on my street who said like, I would never give you money to run for office. You've lost your mind. Even though I've known them my entire life, they don't know Mike Rogers from Adam, you know?
Yeah.
So those social dynamics really, I think they impact my family a lot more than they impact me personally. Cause I think I just go, okay, well, I didn't know you were a piece of shit. Now I do. Anyway, moving on.
Right. Right.
But you know, these are also people that my family have known for our entire
Mm-hmm.
lives, that potentially our families were friends at some point. Like it's a really hard pill to swallow, that they would rather support a stranger than someone that they have a direct connection to represent them in DC or in any office. That was really hard. And to me, it just kind of feels like, wow, I never would have thought that's where we're at. And since then, obviously, it's gotten way worse.
Well, I think if you chase big goals, um, it's a mirror to other people who don't. And it has very little to do with you and so much to do with their feelings of inadequacy, because they can't do that. They could never do that. And just to put yourself in the arena that you have the potential to be great reminds them that they aren't. And so many of those, I think, situations where they would rather tear down your character, make you feel small, make you feel like this is some shortcoming of yours, instead of, wow, it hurts me because I can't do that. I'd never believe in myself enough to do that.
Yeah, there's always, and it's funny, my best friend who I think you probably met at my wedding, Ashley, she lives in Copenhagen. She was here for the month through December and January, and we've been best friends since we were 12. We were kind of laughing about, we were looking through our yearbook and we were laughing, and she was like, God, people hated you. And I was like, I don't think people hated me. I think I just represented something that a lot of people couldn't access within themselves, which is you weren't going to be an asshole to me and expect to walk all over me and that just to be the thing, right? Like, I just think there's always been this element of me that bothers people. I don't always approach things the best way. I know that, but I'm not afraid to approach it. Right. And I think what you just said really resonates. And I've had that thought myself. Like, I'm sorry that you don't have the confidence to say what you think or to stand up for yourself or to try the hard thing or to move away. But I don't regret that I do.
Yeah. And I think I felt the same way growing up too. Like, why do people dislike me so much? Like, what is it about me that is so off-putting? And I think looking back now, even watching my little girl going to kindergarten and how kids interact with each other, I was a pretty weird offbeat kid, but that's part of it, right? I kind of had the courage to be the weird kid and to try new things and to be different. And that intimidates people, even if you think that they're in a position of power. And I used to think like, God, how can you be so like mean to me? Like, I am a loser. You won't even breathe the same air as me. What is it that is giving you energy to like come and attack me? And now I look back, I think with almost a sense of empathy of, okay, I get it. It's coming from some place of hurt deep within you and you don't understand it. And I think that's healed a little bit of my inner child growing up and saying, hey, it's just that I had the courage to be who I am. And I know that that's the same about you. And, it's like I said at the top of the episode, it was an honor to lose to you because you make me emotional. You are so yourself. I just remember having conversations with you. We talked the night before you won Miss America. And I just remember thinking like, what a force you were. And you don't see that a lot. I feel very grateful to have met a lot of women who are. And people like to belittle pageants, like to belittle the Miss America organization, like to belittle women's organizations. But, meeting somebody who has a mission, who has the bravery to get up there and just do it. I was very grateful to stand beside you. And it's been such a wonderful experience seeing you thrive as Miss America, seeing you,
Oh,
try all
Jesus,
of these
Alan.
new these new things. I remember visiting you in LA, and you were out there chasing your dream, like up against all odds, up against literal men who are behind closed doors fighting against you succeeding in this thing that you deserve to succeed at. And
Mm,
you just said, okay, well, fuck you. If you're going to stop me here, I'm going to go be successful somewhere else. And you've done it, and you've tried.
yeah.
And you didn't just try once, you got up and dusted yourself off and tried again and again and again. And that takes a lot of guts. And I'm proud to be your friend. And
Thank you.
um, I think a lot of people listening this and reading your story, or, watching you, following you over the years, um, I want them to have the courage to go and do things. And it might not be running for office, but maybe it's something else, and just being bold enough to do it. Um,
I mean, you only
and
get one life. We only get to do this thing once.
absolutely.
And especially, it's become more clear to me, having kids. I'm a bonus mom to two boys, and now I have my own, and it's even more clear that like they're watching us. They're
Yeah.
watching whether or not you're willing to take risks and to try something new and to step out of your comfort zone. Or if you're showing them that being content and complacent is just life. Like we get the choice to demonstrate how we live to the people around us, and why not show them that like it's okay. It's okay if you don't win at all. It's okay if you're not the best at everything, but by God, you only get to do it once, so you might as well try.
Yeah, I am 100% with you. And I think now, as a mom, realizing that my mom died when she was 50 years old, and how
So young.
close that is to me now, and how close my kids are to being the age that I lost my mom, and imagining only having that much time with them, there's this kind of morbid reality that I'm facing every day of, God, I have to do everything with them now. I have to live my life with this fervor of trying all the things while I still can. Um,
Mhm.
and you had mentioned about showing your kids that they can try new things and that they can fail. Something that's also really stuck in my head now is talking positively about myself to my kids, because we're so seasoned that it's more approachable, it's more digestible to be self-deprecating. But
Mm.
I talk to my kids like I am the greatest thing since sliced bread, and like, mom does this and I do this, and here are all these great things that I've done in my life, and look at all of mom's accomplishments, and like, try on my Miss, Maryland USA crown,
Mhm.
like, do this, wear the gown, here are the things that I've done, the places that I've gone. And my husband, like, sometimes I think rolls his eyes, but I'm like, no, like, my little girls need to know that they are, one, able to go and chase their dreams. They're able to celebrate those wins when they happen, because that's a thing that we don't do. We'll get there to the
Yeah.
top. And so many women have this feeling of like almost let down when it actually happens, because you can't just shout it from the mountaintops like, hell
Like
fucking
I
yeah,
did
look what
it.
I did. I did it.
Yeah.
And I mean, that is something that I will never do again. I'm celebrating every single little success, like no matter how tiny. Look at me. And I mean, it's probably so off-putting, but I don't care. Again, I only
It's
have
not
one
though.
life.
And more people need to see that. And it needs to be normalized. Like, we've heard time and time again women say that the most celebrated another woman gets is when she gets married, and like that's ridiculous. It shouldn't be that. You
Right.
know? You've done incredible things. You've built an international nonprofit. Your face has been in Times Square. Like, yes, your marriage wonderful. But you
Yeah.
have as an individual done incredible things, and they need to see and know that. And also doing those things for yourself, and me doing things for myself, women in general, parents, doing them for it means that I don't have to live vicariously through my children. Whatever they want to do, that is fine by me. I don't need to like rehash my life because I didn't chase my dream or try
Right.
something new or celebrate myself. I've done all that. And I think that's also A lesson that I learned through Miss America and watching people volunteer for Miss America, there's a lot of like living vicariously through other people.
Right.
And the second when you're competing, that you realize like, this is my journey, this is my experience, no one else's, it makes it a lot easier to call your own shots. But I just think as a parent, that's really, really important. Because if you don't do those things for yourself, then I think some people project and put things on their kids that aren't theirs, you know? So them being able to see you do that or see me do that is so important to them, knowing like, hey, I've done all those things. I don't need to do it again. I want to watch you do whatever it is that you care about and you want to do.
Yeah, I think the most traumatizing thing to me as a kid is watching moms be resentful of their children for taking away opportunities that they didn't pursue. Or it's, ugh, I have to watch my kid and I can't be with my boyfriend. Or, ugh, I never got to go, to New York City and pursue my dream. And projecting that internalized feeling of failure onto your children and almost sabotaging their opportunity to do the same because you didn't get that chance, which is really you never took the chance, is, yeah, it's devastating. And, I almost see it. I mean, my daughter's in kindergarten, like she's 4, and you see it already happening. And so you owe it to your children to do it.
The boys have been told that, New York City is a awful place because it's crowded, and so is Disney World, and so is Paris. And, there's this like, I haven't been there and can't do that. So I don't want you to enjoy that or experience that either. And that firsthand, that is so devastating to see, because the imagination of what can be and how cool something could be or how much you might experience or enjoy that experience is clouded by a projection of someone else. And that's something.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it makes a lot of people feel powerless, and they're starting out powerless when they're that little. And then I think that we see that, going back to our original conversation about politics, people feel powerless to actually evoke some real change. If you're going to give advice to somebody who said, maybe they're 18, 19 and really disappointed in, their state representatives or who's in the White House, and they want to do something, where would you recommend that people start? What's a good place for them to start?
They have to start by understanding that the most powerful thing that they can do is vote. We have such voter apathy in this country, and specifically among young people. And I hate to say that, but it's just, the data doesn't lie. It's a reality. There are hurdles to voting, especially if you're living away from your state of residence. Like, there's all these things that keep people from going to the polls. So first and foremost, register to vote where you live. If you're in college, register where you're in college. If you're somewhere for a job, register there. I promise you, just being registered is half the battle to getting out and going to vote. Second to that would be to find your closest friends and make sure they're registered too. Hold people accountable on election day, every election day, not just the day that we vote for president. Because you're right, voting for the president is silly at this point. I can understand how no one feels like they have power in that scenario, but you do have power when it comes to your mayor, your city council, the people who are surrounding you in your school board, and those are the things that impact your daily life. And then after that, those two things, which shouldn't be that difficult, you just have to do them. After that, if there is a candidate near you that you can support in any way, that is so helpful. And I wanted you to know that we talked a lot about money, and money does make the political world go around. Don't get me wrong, but you can support a candidate. You can support a candidate by cooking dinner for their family. You can say, I've got Wednesday night dinner for your family for the next 3 weeks. You can support a candidate, especially if they're a mom, by either offering childcare, or if that's not something that's comfortable to you, offering to pay for childcare. I mean, there are a lot of non-traditional ways that you can support a campaign and really help make the difference in somebody who is willing to run. And just having that kind of support can make a huge difference in how they're able to show up for their campaign and show up as a candidate. And it really does make an impact.
I think it's a great place to wrap. And this is obviously the Learn Too Late podcast. So I would love to hear what's something that you feel like maybe you learned too late in life, or advice you might give to little Mallory before Miss America, before Congress.
I think I learned how to say no too late. I'm really good at it now. But the world of Miss America, pageantry, politics, being Southern, all of that wrapped up is a recipe for being a people pleaser and for always wanting to do more, be more, show up more. And I think that at the core of that, it's positive. You know, you want to do right by people, you want to show up for them, you want to whatever. But sometimes it can be at the expense of you and your well-being and what's best for you or your family. So I learned how to say no too late, but I'm proud that I do know how to say it now.
Well, for everyone out there that's saying yes too often, it's okay to say no. It's okay to try new things. It's okay to fail and then try again. Be embarrassing, be quirky, be cringe, do all of the things. And most importantly, be chuggy and go out and vote.
Wear your skinny jeans if you want to, damn it. It's fine.
Correct. Wear that chevron shirt if you want to, okay?
And
statement jewelry is coming
and
back.
Your peplum top.
Correct. Well, Mallory, thank you so much for joining us. This was such a treat. And I'm just so excited to see what the next chapter of your life is going to bring, because I know it's going to be amazing. I don't foresee you just saying this is enough. I mean, I hope to meet 10 different versions of you as we grow old together.
As we get old. I know, me too. Thanks for having me. I love you.
Love you too.